it is time for social studies today, and as promised, we're going to talk about how Mexico's freedom impacted Texas. So think in your brains, remember, what happened was they didn't like the rule of the Spanish king. He was greedy, he had high taxes, so Mexico said, all right, we're starting a revolution. Well, Mexico didn't. It was Father Miguel Hidalgo. So he gave a speech and it started a revolution. And in 1821, Mexico actually did end up getting freedom. So I had you do a journal prompt yesterday where you told me how you thought that impacted Texas. Because remember, Mexico and Texas were all one colony. So how did that impact Texas? Well, I'm going to tell you. So when Mexico gained independence, the Constitution of 1824 was written. And now with the new federal democratic government, which was similar to the United States, many people wanted to move to Texas. So now that Mexico got their freedom, guess what? We're all one colony. So now we are under the Mexican rule. We're not under Texas didn't split off. Texas isn't still under the Spanish rule. We're now under the Mexican rule because we're all one colony. We're all together. We're all doing the same things. So we did get a new constitution and we did get a new government. And it was the Mexican government who was over us. And they decided they would have a democratic government. And it's similar to the United States. So here recently, we just had an election. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with how it works here in the United States. Now, it wasn't exactly like that, but it was very similar. So the people, you get to vote, you get to have a say on who you want your leader to be. That's the biggest part of a democratic government. You have a say, you get to vote. So the new Mexican government developed this land grant system. Do y'all remember that when we talked about it yesterday during our unit vocabulary? Well, that's what the Mexican government decided to do. This land grant system gave land to people who established colonies in Texas because a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, the Mexican government, this new constitution over there is so much better than what I'm doing. So I want to move to Texas. So the Mexican government was like, come on, guys, we'll give you a land grant. So that's why they came up with that land grant system so that people could actually move there and we could start colonizing a little bit more of Texas. So let's talk about the old government versus the new government. And I am going to post this on Canvas because today for your assignment, you are going to be doing a Venn diagram where you compare the Mexican government, the new government, to the old government, which is the Spanish government. And you're going to have to tell me similarities and differences between the two. Remember, the differences go on the outside, and in the middle are how they were similar. You're going to have to tell me 3 things in each. 3 ways they were different on each side, and 3 ways they were similar in the middle. So pay attention. I'm also going to post it down below. Anyway, so the Spanish colonial government, this was the old government before Mexico got their independence and before we fell under Mexican rule. This is what it was like. So the Spanish government was led by a king and a queen who made the decisions about how the citizens would be governed. This is called a monarchy. So if you've ever seen, there's still a monarchy in some parts of the world, and there's a king and there's a queen, and they rule. They make all of the decisions. The people, most of the time, they don't really have a say. It's just the king and queen doing what they think is right. This government caused Texas to want to fight against it with the Mexican people because they had no say under the current government. The people had no say. They didn't get to vote. Could you imagine that? They didn't get to vote. They didn't get to put in their input. It just, whatever the king and queen said goes. So these Spanish leaders also introduced a new settlement pattern to Texas, and which was plotting land to have a central town square surrounded by perpendicular streets. A lot of towns are set up like that, but that's how they were going to set it up. But now Mexico got their independence and we fell under Mexican rule. So now we have the new Mexican government. This government created the Constitution in 1824. Remember, I told you guys that. This is a government that has 3 branches. kind of like we do. We have 3 branches, and it's a government that represents the people. And they named Catholicism as the accepted religion. So just like we have in the United States, we have 3 branches of government. And this, we have a government that represents the people. So they were actually getting a say. This type of government actually influenced the people to colonize Texas. It gave Texans a voice in how their land was run. That's something that they had a problem with. They were like, oh my gosh, we want to say, we don't want the settlement pattern. Maybe they didn't want that. They wanted a say in how their land was going to be run and how it was set up and the rules. They wanted a say in them. So that's when the Mexican government, they had a land grant policy. And that resulted in much of the Anglo colonization of Texas when people came and they colonized Texas. All right. So that was a lot between the Spanish government and the Mexican government. What do you think you would prefer? Do you think you would prefer to be ruled underneath the Spanish government with the king and the queen who made the decisions? Or would you prefer to be ruled under the Mexican government who had a constitution, 3 branches of government, more similar to how the United States is today? What would you prefer? All right, so tomorrow we are going to learn about Moses Austin and Stephen F. Austin. So what's going to happen is I have a few things I want to say about them because I love teaching you guys about history. But I also have a really cool video that I'm going to show you that tells a little bit more in detail about Moses and Stephen F. Austin. So for your assignment today, like I said, you'll do that Venn diagram. You have to have 3 differences on the outside of each of them. And then 3 ways that they were similar in the middle. And I will post this slide right down below so you can use it on your assignment. All right, guys. I love y'all so much. I hope that you're enjoying learning about the Texas colonization and the impresario system. We, after Thanksgiving, are going to get to the Texas Revolution, and that is going to be so fun to learn about. All right, guys. Love y'all.